Welcome to the Bond Report. So today, again, we are not going to be talking about a specific episode that Joe Bond has hosted on the TV show The Bond. However, there is a rumor that there was an interview with Million Air. And Million Air is a company that is out in, they're based in Texas. Apparently, they were started by a cosmetic artist, Mary Kay, and they eventually needed a way of moving around the nation, and so Million Air was created. They are in Southern California near the John Wayne Airport in Orange County, and they were interviewed and essentially are a gas station for airplanes to offer the option of sustainable fuel. And the nice thing about SAF, which is Sustainable Aviation Fuel, is that the machine or the airplane does not need any mechanical changes to it in order to accept this fuel. So have you ever thought about how much carbon dioxide that your last airplane flight actually produced? And what if that plane could fly on fuel that dramatically reduced the environmental impact? So, can you tell us a little bit about what you understand sustainable aviation fuel to be?
Well, first, mentioning Million Air, when I was flying IFR as a private pilot, I used to go into the Million Air lounges at various airports, and very pleasant memories. It was for private pilots that would go in, and I would refuel at the 6 pounds per hour rate from my little Cessna. Now, at the time I was flying, we weren't that much concerned or aware of the CO2 or gas emissions that were produced, but they were considerable. And I'm happy to learn that the SAF, or Sustainable Aviation Fuel, is a component or a factor with Million Air and other people. So, as we know from even the jet travel, which is thousands of flights a month, that all of this adds up, this being the carbon emissions and the pollution from the atmosphere, which tends to raise the temperature of the earth. So to have an alternative to a fuel that is dirty is very, very interesting, and I'm very eager to learn more about that and see what we can find out.
So sustainable aviation fuel is a biofuel which is made from renewable resources, and it includes elements or base elements like algae, waste oils, which could be collected from even fast food places, or even agricultural residue. And by the using of it, it can actually reduce greenhouse gas emissions up to 80% compared to using regular traditional jet fuel. This means that airplanes that use it actually offer a greener alternative for the aviation industry. And there are some companies that are doing this, but before we go into that, let's see if we can understand why so many companies have chosen not to do this, why it is difficult to implement.
I would imagine modification of the machinery for use would be part of the problem, but we'll see.
Well, that would be, but this particular sustainable aviation fuel does not require any retrofitting at all, and it gives the same flight performance.
How amazing.
So, but there might be some barriers logistically. So, for example, not every single private airport gas station may offer it because it's not there. There's also some high production costs. It's generally expensive because you have to produce it like jet fuel, and there has not been enough research into how to lower the production costs or even scale up the manufacturing process.
So the research involvement would be a boon to the economy, by the way, because it would generate another sub-industry.
It would generate another sub-industry of both logistics, so it would give much more transportation from a plant to a gas station, and would also have the ability for more scientist type people to figure out how to make it better, cheaper, faster, more effective. It's the next generation. But right now we have, it seems like a limited supply chain infrastructure. Not a whole lot of refineries are equipped to produce it.
Well, the infrastructure seems to be a common problem with these advances, as we see with electric cars even, and getting the charging stations. And In other words, the infrastructure, always a problem.
Right. But there are some places like Neste is a sustainable aviation fuel manufacturer, and they're really trying to understand different things. They want to reduce both CO2 or carbon dioxide and other non-CO2 emissions. They are made from 100% renewable raw materials, and they have reduced the emissions by up to 80% over the fuel's life cycle compared to fossil fuels. So Neste is currently one of the big players in SAF in order to help with that. I realize now that is for jet fuels, but it kind of makes me wonder about what about things like cars.
Neste spelled Neste.
Right, yes. And I apologize if I'm mispronouncing it at all. Basically, we need some support from the business community, the aviation community, as well as some government funding. Because there are some other challenges, such as regulatory and certification. Right?
Always the government, yes.
Right now we have...
The government has to orchestrate a nationwide effort, no matter what.
The reason why is because it needs to be consistent. You can't have a certain fuel requirement in Texas and refuel there and not have a fuel that works with your airplane if you need to refuel there.
That's a point I think most people misunderstand, thinking that government regulation is always government interference.
Mm-hmm.
But we saw a spectacular advantage when Texas decided to take their energy grid off the national grid, away from government regulation, and for 2 or 3 winters and summers in a row, they had disasters with
power outages.
Absolutely.
Because they didn't have the backup.
But their neighbors who were regulated did just fine.
Exactly. So regulation is not always the enemy, but we do want to make sure that regulation
is smart,
efficient, and does not have a lot of red tape.
Right. Of course, there can be abuses, but the point is get smart people in who know how to regulate for the benefit of the society.
Exactly. And we still also need consumer awareness and the willingness for a consumer to change their current habits. So, for example, would a passenger pay more to ride on an airplane that had more sustainable but more expensive fuel?
Well, it depends on how much more.
Well, that's a good point. But we need to educate the public on the environmental benefits of this and how it may, in the long run, actually increase things and reduce costs. We also have some countries which we can use as an example. Can you think of one?
I think I heard of Norway,
Well,
who mandated something like 30% of their fuel must be sustainable in another 5 years or so.
and
by
about
2030.
2030, there's something in Europe called Eurocontrol. It's the ECAC co-op, and they have an SAF map. They want to be able to be one of the most promising solutions when it comes to lowering the environmental impact of the aviation
Fuel.
industry, for
So
fuel.
they concentrate just exactly on fuels, not on rubber or single-purpose plastics or anything else. They're concentrating on the fuel.
Exactly. And the head of sustainability in Eurocontrol, Marilyn Baston, apparently wants to really help this joint effort between Eurocontrol and the ECAC map to deliver value in all of the aviation stakeholders, which do participate in this whole sustainability movement. So right now, the map seems to be covering mostly Europe, the UK, and a few other places. It does not yet extend out to places like Iceland, but it could be. It is covered in Spain, in Italy. There's a few places where SAF is currently at airports, or it's at a base of operation. And so that's really helpful to have that level of organization and
At least it's
consistency.
started. Something is going on, little baby projects.
Right. But they have policies which are enforced, and those policies are intended to drive industry change. So there are some private and public projects which are going on in this area. So, for example, United Airlines announced that they are going to be committed to SAF fuel, and they want to reduce their emissions by 50% by 2050. So they're not as ambitious as Europe, but better than nothing.
Right. So again, thinking of the economy, it would be great if say the United States could be a leader in this product and lead the world. And it would, of course, create more jobs, new jobs, certainly.
Absolutely, it would create more jobs. There's LanzaTech. They have a waste-to-fuel technology. They want to convert basically carbon-rich waste gases from different industries into ethanol, which can then be used to produce SAF, or Sustainable Aviation Fuel. There's also Corsia, Corsia. I believe that's part of the ICAO, and that encourages international airlines to offset their carbon emissions by using SAF or by funding other green projects. The whole idea is to offset the amount of pollutions you put in, and if that means planting 1 million trees, or if that means modifying the way you spew pollutants into the environment, which causes all sorts of things like wild storms, and some people think it might be linked to cancer, all of that, it seems like it would be better off for everyone. But tell me what you think would be some advantages to using sustainable aviation fuel.
Well, one of the obvious is cleaner air, fewer poisonous emissions, which can impact long-range weather patterns.
Sure.
And as also mentioned, the economy would improve if people live in some indirect ways and direct ways. If you live in cleaner places, that's
better
good for
health,
the local economy, less medical expense, and so on. And it also decreases reliance on fossil fuels, which are finite. People tend to think we extract it. When I would use the verb mine, we mine oil because there's only so much left, and after it's gone, it is gone.
Right. Which means that those things that we thought would be thrown into the trash heap or the landfill, we can actually pull that out, reduce the landfills by converting some of that into some sort of usable, recyclable thing.
Yeah, which are unknown today, the uses, but the clever people will come up with new uses for these things.
Yeah, exactly. And there's all sorts of international climate agreements, like the Paris Agreement, which we may or may not be part of.
Right.
But anyway, how do you think that...
It's on the wisdom of our politicians. Yeah.
We'll see. So let's see. Emissions and reduction calculations, could those be used to help out with the life cycle of various...
Well, we've mentioned that the less the poisonous elements in the air, there are direct and indirect effects, yes.
Okay, so there's all sorts of achieving net zero emission goals and how to do that. So how would you want to, what's your final thought that you would want for the audience?
Well, again, if it's a new area of research, if you want to put it that way, and we have a chance to jump in and be a leader and create a strengthening economy, more education, we would know more, understand things better, and it would be a plus all the way around. And if we could be a model and learn from other countries as well as provide services, that would be a plus.
So iron sharpens iron. If somebody else is doing it well, don't view them as a competitor, view them as an ally that we can learn from, and then maybe when we create something, we can teach them something, and a reciprocity is built up.
Or as the proverb has it, a rising tide lifts all boats.
Excellent. So what are some things that you can do? Well, you can try and choose an airline that's committed to using SAF on your next flight. That's Sustainable Aviation Fuel. You can also advocate that your local government develops policies that actually promote the production of sustainable fuels like this. You can even see if there's a sustainable type of fuel that would reduce things in trucking and in regular cars on the highways and freeways and byways. You can also support research initiatives, donate to organizations that develop green aviation technology. There's quite a bit you can do. But
a lot of positives.
A lot of positives. So want to say thank you for joining us on the Bond Report. Want to work together to make the skies cleaner, more sustainable. And until next time, as Joe Bond would say, until we bond again.
Great.